Learn the most empowering hiring techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with your host, Rick Girard.
All right. Well, over the past few years, talent has been scarce. And when talent is scarce, fear leads hiring decisions. Now, we don't want to lose what we perceive to be good people. So we shortcut and fast track the interview process. Here's the thing. Our perceptions are often wrong. Our gut is often wrong. And is wrong because the data that we input is either assumed or circumstantial, resulting in marginal hiring that hurts your business. So what if every person that you hired thrived in your company? What would be the ROI if you operated at a hiring success rate of over the 90th percentile? It would be pretty effing amazing, right? A major reason why we get hiring wrong too often is that we don't invest the time adequately vetting people before we bring them in for an interview. This starts with your first call or phone screen. We miss the opportunity to gather true data as to whether a person is positioned well for the organization and their level of performance. That's right, positioning and performance. The most crucial data that will help you understand alignment before wasting time on anybody in a formal interview process. Evidence that's not present on a resume. I'm Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. We help entrepreneurs and executives win the strongest people. We do so by sharing insights from top-performing rebel entrepreneurs, game changers, and industry leaders like our guest today, Mr. Payman Taei. Payman is the founder of Visme, an all-in-one visual communication platform, and he's the co-founder of Respana, which is the link building for SaaS and agencies to improve Google rankings. Payman is an avid technologist who loves new trends and tries to keep up with the ever-evolving internet. His background in biology has led him to truly believe the art of evolution. Everything changes in time. You either create, follow new trends, or you will be left behind, which is what makes Payman the perfect expert for today's topic. Payman, welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show today.
Thank you for having me, Rick. Thanks for the
intro. It's a pleasure to have you. And I did mess up your last name, even though I told you I wouldn't. Sorry about that.
You're like the 1,000th person, so, permission granted.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the challenges in pre-vetting talent today, why it's important to do it in such a way that brings forth the people that are going to be the most viable candidates into the interview process. Then we're going to talk about how to properly vet based on kind of the experience that you have and some of the process you have in place. Sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan. Let's do it.
All right, let's do that. So we often start out with a fun hiring story, maybe funny, maybe something that makes you face palm. Would you care to share a story that with our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So there will be a few of them, but I'll give you one example. And this was a few years back. We've come a long way in terms of improving our hiring process and so on, vetting. But I made a terrible gut decision on a whim. This was for a very specific marketing hire at Visme. And someone that, wasn't a friend, it's someone that I had known years ago, met at an event and so on, and reached out and said, hey, I would love to join your company for this specific position. I fairly quickly made a hire after a short interview, a couple of interviews and so on. And I kind of missed some clues where, you kind of go with a shiny object where it looks great on the surface and you feel that that's going to be great, it's going to work. So I judged the individual by the notable company she had worked at and the position that she held, thinking that, okay, well, she worked here, this is the position she had, probably would be a good fit here. Within a matter of actually a week or so, and of course, clearly by the first month, I knew, and everybody else knew that we had made a decision. I had made a mistake. Mistake in that hire. And so I, decided, told myself, this will never happen again. What are some changes that we can make to improve the hiring process at Visme? And that started a journey as far as where we have gone from there to now. I mean, since then we have, I don't know, gone from a company of probably about 25 people or so to close to 95, 100. I don't know exactly what the number is, but somewhere around there now.
Nice.
And so we had to make some changes and improvements in the process and how we do the hiring. Still a lot of room for improvement, but looking back, we've come a long way.
And I would imagine you don't make assumptions anymore, right?
Still make assumptions. I think we're humans. We make assumptions and so
Yeah.
on, but it has to be. We have kind of a vetting process where it needs to be verified by one or two other individuals to confirm that assumption. Because I do have a pretty good intuition as far as making decisions that you learn over time, doing business and so on, but intuition doesn't guarantee anything. So So I have a pretty good gut feeling of things now through the learning process. But usually I depend on a couple of colleagues to be able to assist with the decisions when it comes to hiring or even certain important business decisions.
Yeah, and I agree. I think what's important is that you load your gut up with the right, good evidence, so that you can actually make that good decision, verify it, as opposed to it being a bias-based decision, right?
Correct.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the challenge. So we talked about pre-vetting prior to the show, and one of the things that we had talked about, that was a big kind of challenge for you as well. So talk to me a little bit about some of the challenges with pre-vetting people before you bring them in for an interview.
Yeah, so we have on our site visme.com or visme.co, VISME, we literally under the logo have that we're hiring, and we generate a lot of traffic to our website. Over 3.5 million visitors a month come through that. So naturally, that serves as the number one platform for us as generating job inquiries. So as far as getting resumes and getting candidates. And there's hundreds and hundreds of resumes, especially in the last few months when the layoffs have increased in terms of technology and SaaS. The number of applicants has drastically improved. So one of the challenges that we have is with the volume of applicants that we get to pre-qualify and pre-vet those candidates to be able to get them in front of the right person, the manager or HR and so on to do that. So the other part with that respect is that we're a SaaS company. We're about 100 people, a little less under that, right near that. And we don't want to set some sort of automations as opposed to, let's say, a Fortune 500 company has where they get tens of thousands of resumes a month. So of course, they have the certain automations in place. We do manually look at every single resume and make decisions on discarding that resume, like it's declining it, or versus proceeding further to the process.
Got it. Okay. So you gotta get a lot of resumes, and that's a problem. Like as you're going through and you're looking at the resumes, what are you vetting out?
Sure. So there's a few different qualifications we look at, and these are pretty simple, and it seemed like they're almost idiot-proof, but I believe they make a huge difference in terms of who we decide to take to the next step. Mm-hmm. One is, and I actually had a LinkedIn post about that just about a couple of weeks ago, talking about how we at Visme do that. And when I did that, there was a couple of disagreements with other individuals who were mentioning is that, well, this point, which I'll mention, wouldn't work if you were applying for a really large company. This is what works for us. Most of them, I believe, work for most companies, but there may be certain adjustments you need to make for yours. There is, in order to select the right candidates, there's a few things we look for. One of them is that we have almost a rule here at Visme, is that if an individual has been job hopping multiple times, let's say individual has 6 or 7 years of experience in, let's say, quality assurance, QA for engineering. Yeah, and in the last 6 years has gone into 5 or 6 jobs, and it's like 9 months, 11 months, a year and a half. People do get laid off, people do leave companies, but when you have this thing happening repeatedly, for us, that's a flag. For me personally, it is. I've instilled in our team that when we see that type of trend in a candidate, it is a big strike for us. Often, unless there's another item that doesn't match, it is an immediate decline. There might be a couple of candidates opportunities here and there that we could have probably would be good fits, but we will go with that assumption, is that this individual is looking for another pathway, another, to serve as a catapult to move to the next place. That's our philosophy on it. And each time in the past that we made hires of individuals that had that trend, they ended up not being a fit for us. And it probably wouldn't be a fit for most companies if they're looking for long-term hires. We look for long-term hires. We have absolutely no interest in hiring someone that is going to come in for 6 months, a year. And of course, most companies don't. And so that's very important for us.
Well, short-term hires are called contractors, right?
Yeah, I mean, and especially if they're not a contractor, they're essentially a W-2 employee, but yeah, you're right. So
I've seen it a bunch too, right?
It,
I see it every day just as much as you do, right?
Yeah, exactly. So another one would be relevancy to the job that they're applying for. Of course, this is very normal. I mean, if you have a QA engineer, is there experience in QA? And you'd be surprised that so many people apply where they're, and they may be looking to change, from one opportunity to another, from one career angle to another. Maybe they're a QA, now they want to become, let's say, a software developer, actually an engineer in terms of just coding, for development. Those are okay, but completely across the board for us, those are not fits because they don't have the experience, the level that we're looking for. So, for example, we used to hire very, very early on for internships, even individuals that come in. Let's say designers used to be great, coming, excuse me, as maybe an intern and working their way into a designer. At this stage of our company, we do. I can't recall the last time we actually hired an internship. So we only look for full-time positions. Experience is very important for us. So experience that's relevant to the industry. So we're a SaaS company. We would prefer someone that is in SaaS versus, from another angle, unless it is a job that is very non-technical in that aspect.
Okay.
So those are the two. Another one is that just, what does a resume feel like? This sounds, I guess, funny. In our industry, we're a technology company. Applications that come in that are in a Word document, docx, or .doc format versus a PDF, they get a strike from us. And I know that.
Word doc?
Yeah, it does. Right. For us, it is. Why? Because we are in the forefront of technology. And if you haven't gone to the path of taking 5 seconds and taking that Google Doc and download as a PDF, or you haven't figured out at this point that's probably better to send documents as a PDF versus a doc format, we unfortunately don't have a place for you. That sounds, pretty bold and upfront, but that's kind of a rule that we have here. It works just fine when you go, let's apply to large companies, Fortune 500s, and even through their automation. Those things will bypass and probably get to the right person. But for us, that is that. The other one, of course, is the appeal of the application itself. No welcome letter, no cover letter, no paragraph in an email application. It's not all of these, it's any or. They are a flag for us. So example, individual may apply for a job and they may have a great experience. Are you
providing the call to action in your job descriptions that kind of would that?
Yeah, we do. I mean, so when you go through our site to apply, we have a comment. Tell us a little bit as far as what you want to join Visme, or, tell us a little bit about yourself. We ask that. And it's surprising that certain individuals, and maybe because, for us is probably they're applying to so many places, they don't want to take 5-10 minutes to provide context of why they want to join Visme. So we believe that if you badly want to work at a company, do your research for 5-10 minutes, go to their website, learn a product, know what it is, and give something unique that it comes across as this individual has done a little homework and they're actually interested in joining this company versus applying to 10, 15 other places. Yeah. So those are very important vetting process. If you, don't meet any of those, you're absolutely not going to be looked at next. If you meet, check on 1 or 2 of those and maybe next, it still may go through the vetting process, the next step, but it will go through with maybe a strike or 2. So we're going to be a little more careful in that interview process, the next steps.
You know what I like about this is that this is all rules that you guys have made that are in alignment with your values of your company and who you guys are. And like you made a point earlier about it being, it doesn't work for large companies, but it works for you guys. Every company is unique and different. It works for Amazon, it doesn't work for Google and whatever, you know what I mean? So you have to do what aligns well with the organizational structure and how you're building the company. And I commend you for that.
Thank you.
So this vetting process you put in place, how has this been important to the company? What has it done from either an ROI perspective or?
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. Those are just pre-qualifications to get more qualified candidates coming through so that we can spend more time with them during the interview process. I'd rather us get 3 great candidates coming through the deeper interview process and for a certain position than we have 15 and then, 9 of them are no fits and so on. That doesn't give us the ample time to be able to interview them, get to know them, and so on. So time, efficiency, productivity are very important for us.
Yeah.
So those are key elements that we want to get the right person in front of the right individual. So let's say it's a sales position. It's got to get in front of the head of sales, customer success, potentially me at the end, and so on. So that is something that's helped us a decent amount in terms of having a better qualification process and essentially eliminating the noise. And another angle is, I'm sorry to jump in. The other one is that once we find that right candidate, and it allows us to focus more heavily on finding the right person. And then, of course, when we find that right person, we believe will be the best fit. And I think during that process, them seeing that we take more time to spend with them, they also become more serious and the success rate goes up.
Yeah. And I'm sure you're probably not falling into the trap of, hey, I've got another offer. You guys need to move on me quickly. Otherwise, I'm going to bounce to somewhere else.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's a trap I see people fall into way too often.
Yeah.
All right, you're listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. For our podcast listeners, we're going to take a quick educational moment from our sponsors. Hey, check out innertrue.com. There you'll find additional content and resources and a link to healing career wounds. Let it be your secret weapon to finding the most strongest people. We're talking to Payman Taei. I got it right.
All right, this time you're good.
And we're talking a little bit about pre-vetting. So we just talked about kind of the impact that it's made within his organization. Now we're going to get into the details of how you do it. So let's talk about how we pre-vet. Walk me through kind of the steps that you guys take.
Sure. So a couple of them I touched on earlier, but I'll go through a little bit more. Pre-qualification process, we got to pick basically the needle from the haystack, right?
Yep.
And the application itself matters. The formatting I talked about, as far as what format it's provided, at least to us, we care that it's a PDF, or it can be a link. It could be a link to an online, document page and so on. And also how well laid out that application is. And let me be very careful on this one. This one doesn't necessarily work well when you go apply to Amazon or very large companies and so on necessarily, unless it was a very specific design position. But we are a design content creation platform. Yeah. And so we care about how much attention someone gives to the tiny details and how clean a resume and organized it is. Tells us that person maybe is neat or cares about the details. And at Visme, details matter a lot. Everything about the designs and the presentation platform and our templates and everything else, we want it to be pixel perfect. And so that matters to us. So that's another one. Then, the matter in which the resume is submitted, like I mentioned, does it look like this person has applied to 10 other jobs and just copy pasted a cover letter across for everybody else? Does it seem like this person is actually highly interested in the position with us? Therefore, they've taken the time to say something meaningful, something different that makes it sound like, okay. Example, I've been a user of Visme for the last year, year and a half, and I noticed that there's a job profile for, let's say, the marketing outreach, and I really feel that this would be a great fit for me because, and there's something meaningful behind it.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, why? Versus,
why are you implying as opposed to like, here's my resume. I hope that you call me. I mean, look, if you're out there and you're looking for a job right now, the worst thing you can do is just spam your resume out to a million places.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do is pick 5 companies you want to work for and spend the time reaching out properly, because that makes a huge difference.
It is, and let's spin around the other way. SDR, sales development representatives, cold email outreach or phone outreach when you get sales calls, right?
Yeah.
How many emails or calls get paid attention to when they're bulked to 1,000 people with the same message versus you send 10 or 15 That's probably a little bit low. 40 or 50, because cold outbound is pretty low conversion. And they're highly targeted. You've done the homework. It speaks their language, talks about something, makes it feel like genuine. You will have probably a higher conversion rate on those 50 versus the 1,000 emails that you sent out. So that's kind of that.
Yeah, especially if you hit it, like if you hit some sort of pain point, or you demonstrated some sort of observation that you think that you can bring to the table.
Correct.
I mean, I'm going to listen to that all day long, as opposed to, hey, let me tell you about my company. I get stuff from RPO companies all the time wanting to do my outsourced recruiting. Drives me nuts. It's always the same message.
That's right. And let's turn around the other way. I'm no longer single. Been married for a while, but let's say you're the individual listening to this is single, and you go on a dating platform looking for the next date. You send 50 emails and you say, hi, how are you? Versus you get pretty detailed. It's the same thing. You're essentially trying to make a date. You're trying to make a connection. So another one for us is how much passion that person is showing through. Have they learned about the company? Do they know the why they want to join? So that kind of goes with the cover letter or the email that they send us. And very clearly, they're not job hopping. I mentioned that earlier on. This person is not on a trend of constantly hopping from one place to another, and that is a very big flag for us. And they're interested because of A, B, and C. I'm interested to join business because of this, and it's meaningful. It shows, again, going back to what they're looking at. Another one, of course, would be that this is we have a large pool of candidates that come in, so that qualification process needs to be in place, so that we get the maximum amount of qualified candidates and the least amount of qualified candidates that come through, meaning high quality, but a lower number from the large pool of referrals that we get.
Yeah, I mean, if you got one position open, you really only need to see one resume, really, if you think about it. If it's somebody who's on target, you don't need to do the compare and contrast thing. You just need something really good who's hitting all the marks.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So you're picking the needle from the haystack. That's how you're vetting them by the application process, right? So they make the application process. Did they go to a phone screen, or did they go straight to an actual interview?
Right. So at that point, there would be typically an email communication that would go out. It could be from depending on what the role is, it could be from the manager of that that is responsible for hiring that role, or it might be the HR individual. And so depending on that, but the process is similar, where there's a little bit of vetting in terms of email communication, asking a couple questions, and just kind of drop a couple little specific questions that's up to them to ask, then see what kind of response they get. Things seem aligned as expected. If they are, then of course that right away will go into the next step, which is to set up a Zoom call, typically a Zoom, so we can see them face to face.
So you're essentially kind of doing the phone screen as a email reach out and having them answer some questions.
Typically, yes. I mean, if it looks really good on paper, like we're like, okay, this looks like a great candidate, we don't have any doubts that we really should interview this person, then we'll pass that and just go directly provide link to set up a Calendly and set up the interview.
Okay.
And then from there, and during the call, I mean, this is it's a pre-qualification at that point. So the pre-vetting is done. At this point, we say it's the first interview, pre-qualification interview. And then at that point, we're going to do a high-level technical experience check. And
wait, the first interview is what? That's your pre-vetting interview?
The first interview, yeah. So we have,
and this is the skills piece.
That is it's a bird's eye view of the skills.
Okay.
It's actually heavily, we more heavily based it on personality and lightly on the experience part. Okay.
Okay. So this is kind of like a cultural alignment piece.
Yes, it is. Okay. But in addition to that, we would also very lightly touch on some of the technical experience or the experience of that person, going through the resume, understanding their career history, just to confirm that things are, what they seem to be. They align. And then additionally, from there, the individual in this step will also do a little bit of a gut check, does this person seem like align with our core values, has the right personality we're looking for? One of the things that is very important to me at Visme, and I've instilled in it across our team, is We don't hire assholes. It's like, you got to be a nice person. Like, you got to be a genuine nice person that we can consider you being a part of our close-knit family, that we could one day potentially be friends and so on. Yes, we do serious work here. We're fast-paced, but you got to be a nice person. We have to get that feeling. If we do not get that feeling, doesn't matter how well experienced you are, or if it seems like this individual, I'm the best engineer out there, I'm the best AE out there, and I've got experience. I worked at company X, Y, and Z, and and it seems like they're not open to constructive feedback, and they're set in their ways. They're not going to work here. And so that's very important for us. So that's a little bit of a gut check that we do.
So that's happening in that first kind of vetting interview. Who's doing that first interview? Is it the team, or are you having somebody in HR do it?
It could be either or. So it depends on the position. Typically, if it's sales roles or customer success roles, they may go directly to the head of customer success or head of sales for that. It also, in certain other roles, they may go directly to the HR. It depends. Typically, engineering, we have it pre-qualified through HR, as there's very specific sets of elements that are easy to check on to confirm they align. And then from there, we would take it to an engineer. One of the reasons for that is because engineering is a decent part of our company here, and our engineer team is extremely busy at all times, and we want to take as least amount of time to get them involved in the pre-qualification as possible until we get to that technical interview step, where they get heavily involved, and of course they go through a similar process and more.
Got it. Okay.
So
this that vetting stage that you're having HR do, that's
sometimes HR or even manager role.
Or even the manager. Okay, got it. So I'm curious as to, like, when HR does it, or the manager, right? They're vetting against the values, and then they're kind of walking through the career history and doing the overall kind of just a high level view, right?
Yes, it's still high level. Exactly. So and even if
this is a core piece of the vetting process before they get into the full interview with the team.
That is correct. And that interview, the next interview, it could be HR, then going to the manager for that interview. It could be the manager that's done the interview. Now, again, the manager doing a further interview that's going to be more detailed, and potentially bringing somebody else into the mix for that next interview. So we're pretty fluid and flexible. It's a matter of which certain individuals have preferences. A manager might want HR to first interview and get them in front of. We're pretty. It's a fluid system. This is not like there is a clear-cut guideline that it has to always be like this across every single division.
Got it. But so from that vetting process right there, before you bring them into the actual technical interview, and then bring them through, what's the success rate in like moving the candidates through to the next stage?
Yeah, good point.
Where your team is invested in it, like the engineering team, it's expensive to have them sit in an interview, right?
Yeah, I would say anywhere between, I would say about 1/3 of the time. So out of 3 interviews, probably 1 will make it. That can vary depending on who's come through, but I would average it at that.
Got it. So like those two pieces, the pre-qualification of the resume, and then bringing them through to like that first, that almost seems to me like that's like what I would call a discovery call, right? Because essentially what you're doing is you're running through, but you're doing it via, is it a video call, or are you guys meeting on site?
We're pretty much mostly remote. It's rarely that we have individuals that are here. I mean, unless we were hiring for a very, very key role, but pretty much most of our company is remote across US and some other countries. Yeah, it's a Zoom call. We want to see them on video and feel them out and talk to them. Same and vice versa.
Yeah, got it. Okay. So that's in essence, that first round is kind of like your phone screen, but you're doing it in a more formalized environment where it's not like one of the things I think candidates, or I think a lot of people hate about phone screens, is just a really quick, hey, what are you looking to make? Do you have 5 years of this?
Yeah,
and
we don't do it. It's not like that for us.
Opportunity for sure.
Yeah, those things. So we also have another tendency that's not related to HR, to hiring, but actually still does apply, is I would like the team to do less than more meetings, do meetings that are meaningful. Otherwise, you can do it asynchronously. You can record Looms, you can communicate on Slack and so on. Use meetings to actually solve a problem and go over something that's being finalized. And so the same thing here. What is the point of having calls for just the sake of it and just ask simple questions that could have been answered otherwise? Now, it's extremely important to meet the person, see them, and communicate with them to go in over certain things, but at least get those things out of the way in the pre-vetting. So I would say pre-vetting versus product view qualification. Pre-vetting is applications come in, we're pre-vetting if this person is good enough to go to the discovery. And then from the discovery / pre-qualification, okay, this person is qualified, personality, / core values checks, technical experience seems to check. All right, let's get to the actual technical deep interview from there on.
That's so good. And that's why you're finding out, like, that's why you're getting like 1 out of 3 are making it through, and you're probably not interviewing very many people that are being like, and they're getting hired, right? So that's that's huge to be able to save the time of your team. Shoot, Payman, we're getting pretty close on time. What would be 2 or 3 key takeaways you can give the audience that can plug into their business today?
Well, are you talking about hiring related or talking about business related?
Related to the topic. I know, I'm sure you got plenty of business.
Yeah. So I would say is go deeper beyond the cover of the magazine. I'll give an example. I think, and again, those probably that are marketers probably going to hate me for this, but I sit very close to product and marketing. Here's what I would say. Certain roles take credit for a lot of things that was done as an entire team versus them. So I am hiring, I'm let's say individual, I'm applying for a marketing position. I was responsible for increasing revenue by 30% over the last 6 months by doing X, Y, and Z. I want you to question that. Was that individual solely responsible, or was it a group effort? Often is. Well, was there very specific things? So dig into that. So, and that's that. So I think the other one was that I believe, even though I made a mistake going by gut check very early on, of course, you learn how to process, is I had a gut feeling it might not be a good fit, but I went with the assumption that, because this person worked here and there, and therefore they're a fit. So at the end of it, just trust what your gut says, and in order to trust that, you got to go a little bit deeper into that. And that requires some additional communication and so on. And another thing is, if you're a small company, you're a company of 20, 30, 50, 70, 80 people, I think nearly all positions, you should get them in front of you if you're not part of the hiring process, you as the founder, as the owner company, and so on, to get to know that person for 10, 15 minutes and feel if you feel the same way. So I do that in almost every single role. Rarely, I would say 9 out of 10 roles, I do that. I just want 15 minutes in front of me before we hire them, put the stamp of hiring that process, an individual, for them to get to know me, see that, okay, what the company's about, and someone is sitting, on the founder position, and also for me to just gauge and make sure that everything checks out.
And you know what? Meeting the founder of the company definitely helps to get somebody engaged, and I think they pay attention to that a little bit more and find more value in joining the company because of it. Payman, thanks so much for your time investment today, and I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community.
Thank you very much.
The best way in which members of the audience can find you, find your company.
Yeah, absolutely. Company, just go to Visme, visme.com.co. Either way will get to us. We're the only one visual communication platform. We're the platform that you create beautiful presentations and design and everything in between to up your brand and your business, regardless of whether you're looking at it to be just simple to fully interactive, engaging. You can find it on visme.com. And as far as with me, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm a little bit more engaged. I don't think there's anybody with my first name and last name, so drop that in, connect with me, tell me that you found me through Higher Power.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Higher Power. Quick thanks to our team, Brian Colburn, Andrea Ballin, and Ayla Gerard. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share after all this show's for you. And we want to continue to bring you valuable content week after week. You can join the Higher Power Radio community at Higher, H-I-R-E, Power, P-O-W-E-R, radio, R-A-D-I-O.com. You can drop me an email at rick@stridesearch.com. Tune in next Tuesday. Our guest is going to be Jason Lavender. He's the co-founder and CEO of Electives. I'm your host, Rick Gerard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power Radio. Catch our LinkedIn Live show every Tuesday at noon or download the podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate you joining us on Higher Power Radio with your guide to hiring success, Rick Giroux.